Hey guys, and welcome to The Broken Sword. Today we are going to take a look at arguably the greatest king in the history of Rohan, Helm Hammerhand. Rumour has it that the newly announced anime, The War of the Rohirrim, will be focused on his time as king and the wars that he faced. As I'm sure many of you know, I've stated many times that I believe he is one of, if not the coolest character that Tolkien ever created, even with the very little that we actually know about him, so I think his story lends itself absolutely perfectly to a new film. Okay, let's get into it.
Build me a throne worthy of Mordor.
So Helm Hammerhand was perhaps the king that endured the most difficult and turbulent reign of all of his ancestors, which makes his successful reign all the more impressive. His reign began in 2741 of the Third Age. At this point, the conflict between the Rohirrim and the Dunlendins had become a fierce, ongoing rivalry, with both sides harbouring a deep hatred for one another. Helm would often meet with the other lords of Rohan and hold war councils in an effort to find a way to put an end to the war permanently, as it had cost the lives of many of his people over the years. Among his council was a man named Freka, a man of Rohan that also had blood of Dunland running through his veins. He shared far more in common with the brutish wild men than he did with the men of Rohan. Freka tried to use his position within Helm's council for personal gain, and to strengthen his own position of power. He formed a plan to have his son, Wulf, marry the daughter of Helm, thus transferring the power of the throne to his family in the event of the king's death. Freka marched upon Helm with a force of his men in an attempt to show strength and to pressure the king into agreeing with the marriage. However, the plan backfired. Greatly angered by such an attempt on his throne, Helm struck Freka, killing him with a single blow from his mighty fist, hence the name Hammerhand. He then declared all followers and family of Freka an enemy of the king. Wulf and the rest of Freka's followers fled to the north, but always had the intention to return, all the time plotting their revenge against the king. In the north, Wulf began to manipulate the Dunlendin forces, stirring their anger and their hatred towards the Rohirrim. About 4 years following their father's death at the hands of Helm Hammerhand, Wulf led an army of Dunlendins in an invasion of Rohan, driving the Rohirrim from their lands, even conquering Edoras. They fought upon the crossings of Isen until Helm and his people eventually retreated to the refuge of Suthburg, later known as, you guessed it, Helm's Deep. Then, in Helm's absence, Wulf proclaimed himself as King of Rohan. While contained within the fortress in the mountain, Helm refused to accept the war as lost. He would often lead bands of his men from the gates of Helm's Deep to war, blowing on the great horn as they rode so that his enemies would know of their approach. It is said that every time he rode out, he slayed the enemies before him, and soon enough, every time the horn was heard, it filled Helm's enemies with fear and dread. During the months of the year 2758, the long winter hit Middle-earth, covering Rohan in snow and ice, claiming the lives of many of the Rohirrim, including both of Helm's sons, Haleth and Hammer. In his grief, Helm would regularly venture out alone into the camps of the Dunlendins, dressed in white robes to conceal his approach in the snow the best that he could. He would slay his enemies. Legend even has it that some Dunlendins claimed that he would just beat his foes to death with his bare fists. Others would say that he used to transform into some huge snow troll and eat his enemies. Such was the fear that Helm invoked in the Dunlendins. Then, following one of his trips into the winter night, Helm would not return. His body was later found frozen solid, still stood ready to fight and to defend his people. Though he never did reclaim the throne of Rohan, the legend of Helm Hammerhand would live on, and the mountain fortress of Suthburg would be renamed to Helm's Deep. And as we know, that would play a huge part in the War of the Ring. Some of you are likely to know Helm from the Shadow of War video game, where his backstory is briefly shown. However, in this version, he becomes one of the 9 Nazgul after Sauron gives him a ring of power to help him recover from his injuries. This, of course, is not canon, but it was still very cool to see a version of Helm Hammerhand brought to life. Now, I've been looking forward to redoing this video ever since we started the channel. Helm Hammerhand is one of my favourite characters that Tolkien ever wrote about. Despite only having very limited information on him, he made a lasting impression on the world of Middle-earth. What do you guys think? Are you fans of Helm Hammerhand? Are you happy and excited to see this animated film about him? Or would you have maybe preferred to see him in live action? I personally think his story just lends itself perfectly to a film. I was even hoping that maybe we could do a fan film of some sort one day, but with this anime coming out, maybe that's not the best time. Anyway, time has come, as always, to thank our patrons and channel members. You guys are all incredible. An extra special shout out goes to the members of our highest tiers: Lorenzo, Nasheath, Denver Steele, Gregory and Andrew. We also want to shout out our limited special tier on Patreon: Kevin, Abram, Michael, Matt and Glorfindel of Gondolin. As members of this tier, you guys are all, of course, executive producers on our film and will be allowed to give feedback on the story itself during pre-production. I believe you've all had the script. If you have not, please let us know. Your feedback has been amazing and we are so excited to get to work on production. If you guys aren't aware, all support from Patreon just goes towards the budget of a short film we are working on, so if you want to support that project, that is how you can do so. Also, a very quick reminder to check out our other channels, The Sixth Ranger and History of Dragon Ball, for some nostalgic Power Rangers lore and anime lore. The links will be in the description if they are of any interest to you. Don't forget, of course, guys, to like the video and subscribe to this brand new channel to help us grow to what we once had. Thank you so much for your time in watching today. I hope you have a fantastic day and a great weekend, and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.